Hey, what's happening? It's me, Robert Phoenix, and we are back for another edition of Sunday Night Astro Live. And you know, I started a little late, and we're not going to go like super late. I always say that, but it's true. We're not going to go super late because, well, we did some work last night with Longo and Merlin, which was a very cool show, and always enjoy hanging out with Longo. And it was great to meet Merlin, and seemed like a very well. He was a very cool guy. Didn't seem like it. He was. So that was awesome. That was really awesome. And I did a 2 hour show on Friday, which if you haven't seen that here on this channel, Friday Forecast, you may want to watch it. I think it's got some interesting threads. Let's put it that way. So tonight's show, let's talk about tonight's show. I'm going to go into chat and I'll say hi to folks. But tonight's show is mostly about the Barbault effect. And the thumbnail was inspired by a movie from the 1970s called The Taking of Pelham 123, which is a crime drama with Walter Matthau and Robert Shaw, who plays a really good villain. And Robert Shaw hijacks a train. It is the Pelham, New York line, and there's all kinds of demands. I think Robert Duvall might be one of his henchmen in the movie. It's one of those kind of sepia toned 1970s. Is the bad guy going to get away with it kind of film? And Walter Matthau he's always perfect when he's cast as like a detective who is like kind of burnt out, you know, tired of the rat race. He's got a face that just looks eternally tired, right? And so he's perfect in that role. So I thought about well, there's some things happening now in the world, like as I speak, which I'm gonna bring into the conversation. And a lot of times we discuss this idea as to whether or not the elites use astrology. I think it's a given. I mean, we know that you know, there are recorded examples of that happening. We had what's her name, Joan Quigley, who was Nancy Reagan and Ronald Reagan's astrologer, whom I met, by the way. She was a very odd woman, and she had a book that came out. I think it was about astrology, and I was with this guy Mark Gordon, who was sent to go interview her. I was working at San Francisco Magazine, and Mark was like, "Hey, do you want to come along with me and meet this Joan Quigley?" And I was into astrology, but I was young. I was 20, 28 years old, and Mark was into astrology. He was a Leo, and so we went to, I think went to the Mark Hopkins. It was in Nob Hill. I think it's the Mark Hopkins. Pretty sure. It's the hotel across from Grace Cathedral. So we went there, and we went into like the tea room or something, and there was Joan Quigley. She's looking scared, kind of scared as a rabbit. And Mark was like, don't really say anything. Okay, I'll just be a fly on the wall, just watch you ask her senseless questions. Um, it was really a nothing interview. But anyway, at least I got to sit and share the same air as Reagan's astrologer. Now, Elsa, who's been on this show, when when I first started to excuse me connect with her, um, she knew somebody who was assisting Obama astrologically. So I just wonder if like every administration gets its own astrologer. So we know at least for a while Obama was using an astrologer. And I'd be very, very surprised if Donald Trump was not using an astrologer. That's my take. So if that's the case, and the so-called elites are using astrology, then to what end or what purpose do they use it for? Can they hijack an astrological moment, like a train, and try to corral it and ultimately take what they need or steer it in whatever direction they decide to? It's something that we're going to talk about tonight. And if I was a person, and look, I don't think Trump has ultimate power, by the way. He doesn't have ultimate power. He's fronting for people who have consented to give him some degree of ultimate power. And he'll be able to tap into that power until he does something different, or something occurs to him, or something happens to him. So, are the people, quote unquote, above him, are they the ones that are navigating certain decisions, moments, actions in time with this idea that, hey, if you do this, man, you're not going to really suffer any impunity, right? You're going to be able to pretty much uh, do what you want, and in most cases, even get away with it. And I look, and I try to be as agnostic as possible with astrology. Um, and there was a period of time where, clearly during the first term with Trump, I was like interested, fascinated, wait and see, and I wasn't reflexively anti Trump. I thought his chart was interesting. Clearly, he's disruptor. He has the ability to connect with the people through his 11th house and all that. So we've gone over his chart. We're going to look at his chart again tonight. But I wasn't as reflexively dismissive of Trump. Now, as the term went on, it was getting harder and harder to invest more payments into the agnostic position, particularly when COVID happened and when the whole summer of Floyd happened. That was kind of a bit of a gut punch, and more so the summer of Floyd uh, than COVID. What I didn't care for was the grandstanding after his term ended, and all he fucking talked about was saving the planet and how the vaccine was this miracle drug that did it. He was responsible for it, and millions and millions of more people would have died if it wasn't for him. I mean, it was like, whoa, whoa, you don't really get it, right? You don't understand what a lot of people had to go through in order to keep their jobs, or say goodbye to their jobs, or say goodbye to their family. There was just no self-awareness at all. It was like, I'm going to just broadcast this message for as long and as loud as I can, um, because I didn't win. This is what I have. You know, I saved the world. You know, give me a cookie. That part I had a problem with. So we all know where we are now. We're in this very strange place, which I think is going to get stranger. And part of what I'm going to talk about tonight, I think hugs that high strange. Okay, so but I'm drinking this drink. I got it today. It's called Hio. Hio. Let me tell you what it says here. It's a social tonic. We crafted our mindful social tonics with organic adaptogens, natural nootropics, and functional botanicals to celebrate life never. It has wasted and with a line through it. I guess they're trying to bring home the fact that you can drink this, but you won't be wasted. Something like that. I don't know. This better than alcohol alternative, I'll be the judge of that, is made for those chasing a new feeling. We call ours the float. The float. It's our hope that enjoying Hio inspires more solace on the sofa, more happy hours without hangovers, more presence at parties, and ultimately a happier and healthier you. So raise a can and find out what it means to be happy in your own. In my own what? My own what? Float? Okay, so it's non-GMO, gluten-free, and vegan. So I've had a few sips, and the first thing I thought to myself was, this would taste great with some vodka. That's what I thought. This needs vodka. Although you're supposedly drinking it to not have the vodka. And I don't really drink vodka, Nick. It's like I can't even remember the last time I had vodka. But here's the ingredients: filtered water, organic flavors, organic blackberry juice concentrate, organic erythritol, organic cane sugar, organic lemon balm extract, organic gum acacia, organic fruit and vegetable juice, that's for color, organic KSM 66, whatever that is, ashwagandha extract, passion flower extract, organic green tea extract, organic ginger extract, organic lemon juice concentrate, organic lion's mane mushroom extract, citric acid. Citric acid isn't really that good for you. So anyway, I read those ingredients. I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting. And this is the organic blackberry lemon. I mean, it doesn't taste that great. It has a weird kind of aftertaste. And I don't know. It says gently flip, then sip. This is a hip drink. This is a very hip drink. Have any of you ever tried this? I'm going to check chat. Have any of you tried this before? I'm about halfway through, and I don't think I've reached float yet. I don't think I've reached the float state yet. All right. I'll catch up to that later. All right, let's get into chat, and then we'll dive into tonight's show. All right. So Matthew up the way could use a timeout. Really? Where is he? Where's Matthew up the way? All right, Matthew. Yeah, we'll take you out. Yeah. Oh, okay. Bye, Matthew. You can have a timeout. All right. Can you hear Robert gulping? Good mic. There we go. Is it as bad? Is it as bad as Jay Dyer sipping on coffee in the Owen Benjamin video? All right, here we go. Michael, Sister Nina, what's up? Christy Daniels, good to see you, Peter Bayonne. Hey, Peter. Barbara Boots is here. Hope you had a good birthday, Barbara. Are you still in your birthday week? Misbehaving too. How are you? Marianne Bartlett, Benito Diaz. Benito. ¿Qué pasa? Dave Sullivan's here. We got Love for Gaia. There's Mark S. Mark S is sporting he's reminding me of Bill King these days. Bill King was the announcer, great announcer, one of the all-time announcers for the Oakland A's, Oakland Raiders, and Golden State Warriors, who had a Van Dyke with a handlebar mustache, where he used mustache wax. And Mark's reminding me a little bit of Bill King these days. It's good luck. Let's see. Did we say hi to Esperanza? Hi, Esperanza. Heart's back. There she is, the lovely and talented one. Patriot girl. Let's see, Merlin. I don't think he probably would matter if you called him Merlin. Let's see. I like the dark spaces. I know you do, Dave. There's the aforementioned California Contrarian. Thanks for the heads up. H.M. Grant is your intuitively whimsical Jackie Delario. Toronto Casper is here. The Mystic Fig. That sounds like a nightclub in Los Angeles sometime in the 70s. The Mystic Fig, doesn't it? Vegetarian food and singer-songwriter lounge jazz. Who else? Sun Tzu is here. Yeah, I like Merle a lot. Paul and Bizak. I was able to catch the three of you last night. Cool. Yeah, we're all making spelling errors. This Mercury retrograde is thick, man. I had some Mercury retrograde moments this last week. Some summertime. I love that song. I love that song. We put that up there. That shows up in a movie called Fingers with Harvey Keitel. He plays that song throughout. Fingers is a crazy fucking movie. James Kovac, Harvey Keitel, crazy movie. One of my favorites. Great show, Friday. Your plant story was hilarious. The secret life of plants. I went up loving those damn plants. You know, and the knowledge transferred, and I can actually take care of a house plant, believe it or not. Oh, look at that! You know, live stream with Merlin. That's cool. That's good. Oops, I commented forecast. No, yeah, no worries. Salty Mama Soul Tribe, Rosie Posey for you too. Zazuse from SLC, so Salt Lake City. Hello there. We need a mod in here. You know what? California Contrarian, I should make you a mod. I should put you in Modsville. You would be good. Let me know if you want that. Trump does have a feng shui master. That doesn't surprise me. They line up the stars. Well, they probably do a bit more than that. Let's see who else we have here. Catherine Mueller. Hi, Catherine. Just got the book. Good. Good. Catherine is referring to the Celestial Blueprint right there out on Amazon. And I will be receiving the hard covers hopefully sometime this week. And for those of you that wanted a personalized and signed copy, they'll be available. Okay. Let's see. Trump is more than Gemini. It's multiple person. Well, he's got Sun Uranus conjunction in Gemini. That's like fucking crazy Gemini, right? And that Uranus also trines his Jupiter, so it makes all that stuff bigger. And he's very at home, taking things on the fly. Sweet Woodruff checking in from Dallas. Sedona Angel. Hi, Sedona Angel. Was not Floyd and COVID the same year? Absolutely. Summer Floyd and COVID, same year. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, for sure. And I'm not sure. I mean, if I was president, I wouldn't want to have that on my watch. Even if somehow I was supposed to go through some humiliation ritual, right? I wouldn't even want to have to go through. I wouldn't have to go through that. It's like enough already. I've run a bankrupt like 4 times and had to borrow money from George Soros and the Rothschilds. Don't you think that's humiliating enough? Now to go through this. Let's see. So I'm not even sure Michael's here. I think Michael checks in. Oh, here he is. I got to defend Michael. Michael's my guy. Michael's my guy. He was just probably doing something with his kids. Got a daughter, young daughter. All right. Let's see. Yes, I timed him out. Mm-hmm. Nope, never had this drink. But then again, I only drank water for the occasional lemonade. If you believe that, Robert, I tried against the real products rather than the extract. Yeah, Matthew can eat shit and have a Coca-Cola. I like that. I like that. Current Rangers here. Lynette made it home from work. She was selling gluten-free uh, tortilla communion today. Let's see what else we have here. Astrology with Heather. We got to highlight this right there. Heather Eland in the house. Good to see you, Heather. I hope all is going really well with you and Mr. Matt. And let's see, first time in chat, kind of nervous. Hey, let's give Holly, let's just give Holly a virtual hug so she feels maybe not as nervous. But don't hug too long. Keep your virtual hug for maybe 2 seconds. Don't overhug Holly. We want to make her feel okay. Let's see who else. Lois Francis is here. You love the blue glasses. Yeah, these glasses. I got to tell you, I go through glasses. They're strong. You know what else for these glasses? First of all, they cost me a lot of money. And I tell you that not because I brag, but when I spend a lot of money on something, I tend to make sure I don't fucking lose it. So it's twofold. Strength and wear my glasses because I don't want to have to replace these. In fact, I'm not even sure if I can right now. Giza Moon Shadow, what's up? Christina Carbone. Hi, Christina. Let's see. We're just going to go through. Mod me up before. All right, you're getting it, man. I have to do this on the side. I'm not sure I can do it show side, but you are going to be a mod. California Contrarian, I'm slapping a badge on you. You have been deputized. It's coming. Let's see. Sion Longo Show, thanks for your speech. Thanks for being here. One of the things I love about being on Longo Show, besides Longo himself, I dig Longo. Like, you know, I mean, is he singular or what? I haven't met his brother, and I know his brother's really cool too. But like, Longo is a singular character, and honestly, gives me hope for the future. So I really enjoy hanging out with him, and hopefully, I'll be down in Florida doing an in-store at his bookstore. And so, you Floridians, if you want to come down and hang out with us, come on down. Georgia Ruth ordered the book. Right on. Can you talk about what happens when planets go over your south node? Sure, I'd be happy to do that. So it is transiting planets over the south node. Okay. All right. I'll do that. Michael, you're good. You're good. We're just going to reinforce the ranks. Let's see. Oh, and we also have our Chrome Ranger. Don't fuck with the Chrome Ranger. Well, I'm just telling you that right now. That's not a person you want to fuck with. Let's see. Who else do we have? Fun fact. I just wrote through Heather. Oh, cool. That is a very fun fact. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Pipsqueak, 56, 567, Cambries 3. What's up, Pipsqueak? Oh, we got some new people here tonight. Dorian. Hi, Dorian. I'm not sure if you're new or not, but if you are, welcome. Holly feels so happy and welcome. Right on, Holly. Heather is a detailed Virgo. It's very detailed. Very detailed. And I was in the very same shopping complex where Heather and I used to meet once, maybe twice a week to do astrology lessons. And Heather has taken the work and just expanded and exploded, and like super, super proud of her. She's, you know, she's great. I can brag and say one of my students became a big time astrologer, right? That's always cool. Blue Wrench incoming. There we go. We'll do you right. California Contrarian. I know you will. Merlin. We got Merlin sighting. Where's Merlin? Let me see Merlin. Wise Wizard of Merlin. There he is. Right on. I feel like we should break out some kind of a ceremonial Arthurian horn blast here. to welcome Merlin, right? Something like that. See if I can find one. That might be fun. Let's see. How about trumpet? There's bugle. Welcome. Let's see if we do that. Let's see what happens when we do that. Let's see. Let's see. Hold on. You got to be the right one. Here we go. Right here. This is for Merlin. This is what they do. This is what they did in England when the court wizard would arrive and show up. Announcing Merlin, the magician. There you go, Merlin. That's just for you. All right. Let's see. You emailed me last week. Check your emails. Which one? Which email? I'm sorry. I flip around the email addresses. Oh, I remember that at the Starbucks. Also Whole Foods, which looks a little like Starbucks. Bruno from last night with Longo. Yes, that is him. Yes. Dr. Lassero, the show at 67. Very good. Very cool. Good to see you. We got Charles, Phoenix Book Tour, Barnes & Noble, Rochester, New York. Okay. Maybe that'll be leg number 2. Same as it ever was. I like that. More than I deserve. Oh, no. Bird one at the Robert Phoenix. Let's see. We have Francois. Oh, we got a star fucking studded. Say hello to Francois, who is a very creative man. Dare I say, borderline genius, and could be a very important part of our future here together. So greet Francois. Say hi to him. Let's see. Why do you have so many email addresses? I'm running from the law. That's what I'm doing. It's a good question. Good question. I found one that I finally like. Right, like I found one that I finally like, and it's encrypted, and it is an email service called Tuda, 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 Tuta, Tuda, and it's easy. It's the one I've been waiting for all these years. robertphoenix.com. That's it. And the email address is actually in the description of the show. It is one that I've finally settled on, and I apologize for people who have used some of the other older email addresses. But you can find me there. So I don't know, Robert. So yeah, I'm not as good a Virgo as you, Heather. You're a much better Virgo than I am, and I mean that in a very positive way. Let's see. Yes, let's see. He's on the lam, kind of, sort of, but not quite. And Jamie is here. We also have Jamie, our good friend Jamie from Canada. I'm not quite at float stage yet. All right. This has been fun, and I'm sure people who are new to the show, like, when is the fuck we're gonna ever talk about astrology? Yeah. This is yeah. Here we go. Why don't we get a handle on where we are? Right. Let's get a handle on where we are astrologically. So this is do a chart of the moment. All right, let's do that. And am I going to have to burn one? Did you guys see that? Did you guys see I don't know if I saw it. I don't know if you saw it. Hold on. Didn't hear. Because usually he's right. I got to burn one. That's right. Let me just play this again because I'm sure it happened. One more time. Merlin's worth two, at least. Let me see. Yeah, there we go. Merlin's worth two, just in case I didn't burn one. It's a Mercury retrograde. Why not? Here we go. Cue up. But I think I did it already. But we'll do it anyway. It's fun. It was a fun one. Let's do it again. Here we go. All right. The fanfare. Oh, there we go. Randy Dunn. One more time. I just got to make sure we do it. There we go. The Royal Entrance Fanfare. There it is. There it is. Okay. Now I feel good because you know what happens with StreamYard. I got to burp one. All right, let's get back to the chart of the moment where we'll even be able to have a little gander. We'll have a little gander at Barbault's Basket, shall we? All right. Where are we? Oh, yes, right here. All right. This is where we are currently. And, look who's here. Oh, gone now. All right. Do that. And we'll make this bigger. So we zoom in and zoom in. Okay. There we go. All right. So, technically speaking, Barbault's Basket consists of the following. We have Pluto here. We have Neptune here. We have Uranus here. And then we have we have Jupiter here. So we have sextile. We have sextile. We have sextile, and then opposition. So when you let me show you what the what it looks like when it's highlighted. It looks like, and you guys are all pretty adept at this, and you've been masticating. You've been masticating the information for a while now. So you guys are all up to speed, but just in case you aren't, this is what it looks like, right? We have Pluto, we have Jupiter, we have Uranus, we have Neptune, sextile, sextile, sextile opposition. So there's a lot of sextile going on. And the idea here is that this is a formation that was discovered by a French astrologer, Barbault, and he did a lot of what we call this mundane astrology, and looking back different periods historically where certain transits match up with certain periods of time, and it's usually with the outer planets that we can determine things that are happening culturally, something that we do a lot here and something we'll do again tonight. So I can hopefully prove a point or at least give you something to think about. So this alignment, which is the same as this alignment here as we separate everything out, the idea is that it's supposed to usher in a new period of time, or at the very least, uh, the potential for an awakening. This is the language that Barbault used. And so when we have something like this, what it does is that it's almost like for me, it's like a Rorschach. And certain astrologers will see this in a particular way. Let me give you an example. So let's say you're an astrologer and you were really rooted in like the goddess and the feminine, right, and the great goddess, and everything's like that's your root ball, right, and everything branches out from that. You would look at this and you would determine that could um, this could evolve along the lines of your own personal ideology or cosmology that is rooted in how you're going to use astrology. Does that make sense? All of a sudden it's like, wow, this is all about, empowering the feminine spirit, or more equality with Pluto, and and we're going to we're not going to care about the classification of gender, right? It's very fluid with the Pluto Neptune sextile. I mean, you could theoretically, if that was my jam, I could probably use this and make a case for it, right? I'll go to the other end of the spectrum. So somewhere along the way, like some people became like mega astrologers or patriot astrologers. And they'll look at this and they'll put it within the framework of their own context and how they see it as, well, I really am all about, I'm really all about Trump and making America great again. And, maybe a modicum of America first, right? But we know all those talking points, and they could use this and they could bolt it to that ideology and that point of view. So I guess what I'm saying is that when we look at something like this, or we deal with something like this, a lot of the interpretation is based on who's interpreting it. Now, that said, there are things here that do reach back to other times. Now, the planets may not be exactly the same, but the event that we talked about last night was in 1988, where there was clearly a basket going on in 1988, and it was the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of communism. Wow, that's a really big deal, isn't it? I mean, if you're just looking at one event that can be like a standard, or an event that we can measure where we are against another point in time, well, that's a pretty significant event. But what's really interesting, we got into this discussion a little bit last night, is that when these things occur, when something on a grand global scale, like the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of communism, at least through the Soviet Union, occurs, over time, there is a downstream effect. So if we look at this as happening in 1988, right, which is when it happens, 1988, and then you have these balkanized states, which had blood feuds going on for a very long time, right? If we're being completely honest, like a lot of these states were beefing prior to World War II. I'm sorry, prior to World War One. When you look at Prince Ferdinand, right, and supposedly him getting shot and his wife getting shot in Montenegro, right? Montenegro has just come up in the news recently. Well, maybe not the mainstream news, but in my news, Montenegro's come up, and a group of Montenegrins got really pissed off at some Israelis that were there, and I think the place they were staying or the town they were in, they chased them out. I mean, this is just like over the last couple of days, but it's interesting because theoretically That's where World War One starts, right? It's Montenegro. And it's all those countries, that were all part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire trying to find some degree of independence in that, like that gets frozen because World War One happens, and then you have, these countries that are fighting Germany. Which is basically like Prussia, and then you have the Russians jumping in, which was a big fucking mistake. So these beefs and these kind of blood feuds were frozen in time, pretty much, right? Because after World War One is over, it's sort of like, okay, we'll chop up the map a little bit more, but it's a hop, skip, and a jump from chopping up the map to World War II, and it's like, well, now you're a part of Russia, or if you're not a part of Russia, you will be by the time we're done with this march. So a lot of these beefs were buried. And then once the wall fell and the Soviet Union, or former Soviet Union, had no claim on these balkanized regions, the beef started happening again, and it was also exacerbated by, of course, the UN and particularly NATO. So what are we talking about, right? We're talking about the downstream effect of what happens so we're all, here in the West, we're dancing around to Jesus Jones. And right here, right now, right? Oh my God, the Berlin Wall. Let's have the Love Parade in Berlin. And like all these things are supposed to be part of the greatest moment in the 20th century, the defeat of communism, right? And it's cool for a minute until they start beefing, in places like Kosovo, and it gets ugly, Bosnia, Herzegovina, and it's like, Christians versus the Muslims. It's like really, really ugly, right? So that begins to happen. Now we're no longer in this Cold War, but we've got all these brush fire wars that are starting. And then at the same time, again, just historically, we see the rise of the Russian oligarchs who start, rubbing their hands together and say, well, let's get in here and start giving up the state and the oil and all those things, right? And of course, Putin eventually gets in and says, "Look, you got to stop. Can't let you do it. And you can leave, and you can take your money with you, but you got to leave." And they all listen to him except for one, who is Mikhail Khodorkovsky, who decides that he's going to buy Yukos on the cheap and not listen to Putin. He wants to go to jail. But that's a little side story to all this. The real downstream effect of the fall of the Berlin Wall is the rise of the War on Terror, which we're going to talk about tonight. And a lot of people think that the War on Terror started on 9/11, 2001. The War on Terror really starts in the first Gulf War, because Saddam Hussein, even though he was cast as like this strong man, he ultimately was being portrayed more as a terrorist than he was as being a political despot, even though it's hard to sometimes distinguish between the two. And the reason I know this is because if you look at periodicals like Time magazine, I think Life might have been around right about that, Newsweek was, they were already pictures of Saddam Hussein and saying the most dangerous man in the world, the most dangerous man in the world, the most dangerous man in the world. And so in 1990/91, a mere 2 years, not even 3 years after the wall fell, we're in, right? We are in Iraq. And I'll talk about that more in a bit. And then that never really ends, right? They leave Saddam in place because they need a boogeyman, right? That's what they need. They need a boogeyman. They leave him in place. And it's like, let's just keep this guy on the back burner in case we ever need this again. Now they deliver sanctions, brutal sanctions. They control the airspace over Iraq. The U.S. Air Force controlled the airspace over Iraq. And then eventually, right, if you really pay attention, I think it's around 96 or 97, the whole terror plot in the West starts to gain traction outside of Saddam Hussein. And you have the first World Trade Center bombing, and that's Ramzi Youssef, which is a very heavy deal, right? It was a bomb in the World Trade Center predating 9/11, and that is another kind of milestone, right? Another flashpoint on this war on terror. So they just keep repeating these events, some of them which may be somewhat organic, some of which are astroturfed, which we've seen. But now we have a new threat. We have an existential threat, which is the war on terror, which has replaced the Cold War. Even though they want to hijack the Cold War and turn modern day Russia into the former Soviet Union. A little side note there, right? So what I'm saying is that when you get into something like this, right, and let's say this is valid and true and real, and as humans, we find that we are indeed on an accelerated path, whatever that accelerated path is. It could be the capacity to hold greater love, the capacity to hold greater truth, the capacity to expand beyond the limited potential of our tightly defined boundaries and abilities as humans. Like, this is all part of this, right? Like, could this occur? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Why not? Right? And this basket, by the way, different than the 1988 basket. Jupiter and Leo to me is really interesting. And it's like, well, I'm not a Leo. You don't have to be a Leo. Wherever Leo is showing up in your chart, Jupiter is pulsing, right? It's pulsing. It's the second sun, and it is in the sign of the quote unquote first sun. And guess what? We're gonna have a Jupiter Sun conjunction very soon. I expect it to be incredibly hot just from a temperature standpoint, and it has been. And I think it will definitely heat up. But it's almost as if these two cosmic forces join together. And when I think of the sun in Leo, I think old school. Like, I think kings, queens, bloodlines, divine right, all the things that go along with Leo. The quote unquote, the crown. And what's really interesting is that I don't pay much attention to these things, but a lot of people, were talking about this connection between Lionel Messi and then the Spanish soccer player. And when you look at Messi, right, he's like the GOAT. He is the king. He is the crowning achievement of global soccer. And even his first name, Lionel, sounds very much like Lionel or lion, right? That's Messi. And then we have the Spanish soccer player, and there's this picture of Messi with baby Yamal, right? So I don't know if you guys have seen this, but it's kind of mind blowing. I'm going to put it up here. So this was Messi in 2007, and I guess the kid's mother, won some kind of a lottery, if you believe that. I guess I'll believe it. right? To have Messi here and the baby here have this photo op. Well, this baby grew up to be this guy who looks like a clone of Deion Sanders' kids and the star of the Spanish soccer, the football team. Okay, so this is kind of interesting in that in this regard, right? We're gonna call uh, Lamine. We're gonna call Lamine Jupiter because he is the baby son, right? He's the baby son, and Leo, Messi is the son. And so what we have here is almost like a symbolic, what's weird about Argentina, by the way, I don't know if you guys watch this or noticed it, but there are times when they would have their flag while they were playing. You have to pay attention, but they have this flag and what's down at the bottom, like a little sun. Like every now and then they would have the Freemasonic compass in the square show up. It's like, what the fuck? Like it would show up in their flag when they would play the World Cup. It was really, really weird. Right? Really, really weird. So there clearly is some symbolism here with sports and soccer in general. So this is the sun, the lion, right? And now passing off the crown to baby Jupiter. And we can see that right here, right there. And Messi also happens to be a Cancer. He's born earlier in the month. So I shouldn't have the transits out here. That's redundant. That's redundant. But I think it's interesting, right? Just from a symbolic standpoint. So what does that mean for us? What do we derive from this? Now, I know some of you might have some of that royal blood flowing through your veins. Some of you got some pretty backed up bloodlines. And I mean that in a good way, right? So thank you for hanging out with the rest of us. For me, what it means is that this is a time where we go from this constellation of divine right, royalty, bloodline, kings, queens, and something new is emerging. Perhaps the emergence is the quote unquote everyman. And I have to say that we live in a really, really interesting world because, on the one hand, and maybe this is Uranus talking, on the one hand, I see idiocy on a grand fucking scale. I mean, I go through my Twitter feed sometimes and I'm stunned. I'm stunned not only by the videos I see, which I try my best to identify as not being AI, but also the people that post on there. It's like we are living in the village of the idiots. But on the other hand, I'm also seeing people wake up, comment live from a fairly high degree of self-awareness and what I would call spiritual evolution. Doesn't always mean religious connection or evolution, though the two can, work together. But spiritual evolution, I'm seeing this. And it's a really wild time to be alive. And if it wasn't for this large chunk of people, and it's not just people pontificating, right? There are people that know kind of what the fuck is going on. There's this guy who is on, I don't know if he posts on Instagram or TikTok, I don't know, his shit winds up on Twitter. And he posts as the Joker. Have you guys seen this guy? He's fucking amazing. And it's not AI. He has got the Joker down pat. And he's able to as the persona of the Joker, speak really uncomfortable truths. So this aperture of self-awareness and people waking up into, I don't want to use the word matrix, but waking up into the miasma that we call reality is really, really fascinating. And some of it is really funny. Like, we live in sort of the golden age of memes. And now that we have AI, oh my God, it's off the hook. And you have to have some intelligence, some self-awareness in order to do that in a way that is meaningful. And I cruise through the comments a lot of times. I'm always reading comments because I find them fascinating. For me, the comment section, whether it's on Twitter or whether it's YouTube, that's the litmus. And I'm finding people they're waking up. Let me give you another sports analogy. And I know a lot of people like, Robert, I was talking about sports because it's visceral, it's in real time, and you can get a handle on it. All right. So Draymond Green, who's one of my favorite NBA players to dump on, has been very active on Twitter and his podcast. And whenever Draymond opens his mouth, he's convinced that he's saying something truthful, authentic, and profound, and maybe slightly rebellious. No, he really sounds like a fucking idiot. He sounds like an idiot. And when you look at Draymond Green, he was part of this championship team with Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, and he was good and he played an important role, but he was not the straw that stirred that drink, to borrow a quote from Reggie Jackson, because that's how he saw himself. Draymond Green was a role player, albeit a very critical role player, and probably not going to have the same career with any other team. You put Steph Curry on just about any other team, he's going to have close to the same goddamn career because he's that good. Draymond he doesn't have that. He's got to be in a system where all the parts fit. So for the longest time, the fan base of the Golden State Warriors supported him without fail, even when he punched Jordan Poole in the face during practice. I did a whole show on that punch, by the way, long time ago. And I was shocked at that time that the fan base was so invested in rallying around Draymond Green and saying, oh, Poole's a pussy motherfucker. Right? He deserved it. His bitch ass deserved that. It's like Draymond was just showing him how to be a man. Now, Draymond should have been arrested for assault and battery. He should have. But what happens to Draymond? Nothing happens to Draymond. He doesn't get suspended. Nothing. And what happens when somebody displays horrible behavior and it goes unpunished? What do you think happens to that person? They'll do it again. And he didn't punch Jordan Poole, but he choked Rudy Gobert, right? He has continued his, I guess he calls them hijinks. I think that's what he calls them on the court. Well, guess what? The fan base is turning on Draymond Green. I go through the comments. They're turning on him. This last couple of weeks, he's been following LeBron James around like a little puppy dog. Never a good look, by the way. And he has managed to turn almost the entire fan base against him by making veiled threats to this new rookie, Yaxel Lendenborg, who happens to be from the same school, Michigan, that Jordan Poole was from. Draymond being a Michigan State player, he doesn't like Michigan. And so here we get into the whole Gemini effect, right? Jordan Poole was a Gemini, is a Gemini to this day, still a Gemini. And nothing ever happened to Draymond Green. Didn't lose any sponsorship money. Nothing. Right? So guess what? History, and I guess what we would call maybe the astrological matrix, we'll just dub that for now, sends him a 6'10" version of Jordan Poole to deal with. Axel Lendenborg is 6'10", 250 pounds. He looks down on Draymond Green. And he's a sweet kid. A couple of years ago, all he did was play fucking video games 15 hours a day. He's like a baby Huey in some ways. Well-meaning, a little naive, self-effacing. I like the kid. But the fan base is turning on him. Why? I'll tell you why. It's this part of the Barbault Basket. Draymond connected to, again, theoretically, basketball royalty, right? The Golden State Warriors. Gold represents Leo, right? Gold and Leo, hand in hand, right? Hand in hand. And basketball royalty. Steph Curry, his father played in the NBA, one of the great three-point shooters of all time. Del Curry, basketball royalty. Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr played with Michael Jordan and coached under Phil Jackson, basketball royalty. That's how it's lined up. Well, the basketball royalty trip is over. People are turning on Draymond Green. And I think with good reason. Because we're seeing, right? We're starting to see deeper and deeper behind the facade. So when we look at things in the quote unquote material world, like there's this thing called the revelation of the method. And the revelation of the method is when the supposed masters of this reality, the social engineers, the grand occultists, they will show you what they are doing. Right? They're going to show you what they're doing. And that's the revelation of the method. And then they'll also bring in predictive programming. Right? And you would think that is solely part of their province or their domain, the revelation of the method, because they're the ones that are revealing the method. But what if I said that that's not true? That the revelation of the method is something that they've just adopted. It's something that happens all the time. And then what they've done is that they've decided to create a ritual about it and say, well, we told you. We told you, so now you know. And now that you know, you can't complain about it. You can't complain that something happened to you without your knowledge or foreknowledge. That's kind of what it's about. Right? Like even the run up to 9/11, there were a number of shows or pieces of art that were oddly predictive about 9/11. Now, were those people or those artists just part of the zeitgeist? Or were their hands behind the project that were part of the revelation of the method? It's a good question. Good question. I think maybe some of them were, maybe not all of them. Maybe some were just a natural byproduct of people being able to, see something about a place or an event and then create a piece of art around it before it happened because that's part of their ideology. What am I talking about? I'll show you. So we have I'll give you an example. So some of you might be aware of this. If you're not, welcome to the real, as Neo once said. So this is an album cover by a hip hop duo from Oakland called The Coup. And this was the original cover for their uh, album called Party Music. What are we seeing here? Now, is this predictive programming that somebody from the label decided to, hey, let's make an album cover, right? Can't see it? Oh, my bad. All right, let me bring it up. Hold on. Thank you. There it is. This is what I'm talking about right here. Here's The Coup. And even the name, right? The Coup. Now, party music has to do with the Communist Party. And we got a Molotov cocktail. So, it's like Tommy. It's a theme record. But this comes out prior to 9/11, and there's more, right? So is this just part of the collective unconscious? Was the World Trade Center something that uh, symbolized the height of capitalism, and that they wanted to blow it up and tear it down? Or did this slip through the cracks of their record company, where somebody said, hey, why don't we do this? The mysterious art director suggested, yeah, man, yeah, baby. That sounds like a really good idea. Well, it never really made it to the stands like it did for a minute, and then they had to remake it. And this is just one of a number of things, right? So that's the revolution of the method as it relates to, like, and even some predictive programming here. Right? This is what I'm talking about. So if we go back to the chart, once again, we'll go back here. What I'm talking about is maybe a little bit different, and we're able to kind of see behind the curtain. And that the emperors, and I say emperors, have no clothes. That's how I'm reading this. Just right from the jump. That's how I'm reading it. Now, if that's true, right? If that's true, because also we got to bring Pluto into this mix. And Pluto on the other side, right? Pluto moved into the U.S. third house, if I'm not mistaken. But Pluto, when we bring Pluto into this mix, it also serves as a transformational capacitor, right? These two planets are locked in opposition, are really, really interesting. They're very interesting. So when we get into Pluto and Aquarius, some of the things that we begin to entertain is like power to the people, right? P for the people with Pluto. And I was talking with my Albanian friend earlier today, and he told me, you don't see this shit on regular news. Like, you don't see this on regular news. Like, they are still in the midst of trying to kick their PM out, their entire government out. Albania is like entrenched, really entrenched in trying to declaw their system, right? And I didn't know this. He told me about this. Apparently, their PM brought Kanye West over to perform in Albania. He paid Kanye West $5 million to show up in Albania to do a concert for people. I did not know this, and apparently, it didn't really go the way that the PM wanted it to go. Right. And even that is like very Pluto in Aquarius retrograde. Yeah, let's bring Kanye here. Boy, that's a great fucking idea. Kanye's just thinking, whoever's moving the levers in Kanye's brain is like, yeah, let's start a revolution. I can do this. Rolling the dice. He's probably making sure that his programming was intact before he came over. But that's what's going on in Albania, and it's not just Albania. We're starting to see people stirring in a way that is depending on where you are, right? I think it's actually inspiring. Some people may say, well, it's just, the masses and the lemmings, and, they don't really know anything, and the gatekeepers will catch them, and then they'll just move them into another pen because they're stirring. Well, there can be some truth to that as well. So this is how I see this, right? This is how I see it. This Pluto Jupiter opposition. To me, again, this is the transformation, particularly when we get into Leo, from the old sun to the new sun, right? From the old guard to the new guard. Now, again, you can look at Messi and the little baby as being part of that symbolic representation. I'd like to think it is. That's my take on it. And maybe it was always meant to be that way. Maybe they planned this out a long time ago. This is going to be the baby that will take over your status in your life one day. It is written, right? But I feel like it's a really interesting symbol. And I think it really speaks to, in a lot of ways, kind of where we are. In Pluto, to me, Pluto oppositions are interesting because number one, they present pressure that can feel external. Right? That's how I tend to see and view oppositions. How do I know this? Well, I went through a hell of an opposition last year when I had Saturn and Neptune opposing my sun at 29 Virgo. Hello. Talk about pressure. I felt like my body was going to explode. I put on 40 pounds of water weight. Walking around McDonald's, well, not McDonald's, HEB was like, running a marathon is brutal, right? So what were those two planets doing? Ultimately, forcing me to deal with any number of things that they were related to. Primarily my physical health, that was number one. And number two, the long-term physical health. Short-term, just how to get it off then and there. And it also forced me in a lot of ways to like reevaluate what I was doing in the world. And you get that like at 29 degrees Saturn, 29 degrees Neptune. Am I doing the right thing? Am I evolving? Is my time in this world over? Should I be moving on to something else? And I felt very vulnerable during that time. And it's not something I was really, really comfortable with. So I had to hang out with that and then begin to make some decisions based on that. So I'm not sure exactly where the turning point was, but there was kind of a turning point. It was like, no, I can't stay here. Meaning I can get well, but I can't stay in the place where I don't really know what I'm going to do. And what's interesting, and again, I'm just sharing personal experience. You can apply this to your life. I like to be my own guinea pig. I got through that, and when I say got through it, it wasn't like I was just done. But I got through this crisis point, and if Jamie's in the chat, I've already greeted him. Jamie came to me and said, how'd you like to get this published? Sure. Let's do it. And I'm just doing the math. What if I had said, I'm just done. I've been doing this. Like for me, this really took off for me as an astrologer back when Saturn was in Virgo. It had come into my 10th house, and that's when I started doing my astrological blog. So Saturn was all the way around on the other side of the chart. And me as an astrologer, I was like, wow, gee, I'm done. I started off up here. There was my sun, there was Saturn. Now we're way down here, and I'm in the opposition. That's what I thought. And I was like, no, I can't let it go right now. I have to find another way to make this next journey up to the top of my chart meaningful and hopefully consummate it, be nice, right? Like 14 years from now, because that's where it'll be. And if that's the case, boy, I'll be looking a lot older than Rick Levine. I can tell you that right now. Rick would make me look like a spring chicken. I'd make Rick look like a spring chicken. So that's what I did. It's like, okay, let me just rededicate myself to what we're doing, what I'm doing. And then, there was a knock on the door. And there's more coming, by the way, which I can't really talk about. But if I had dropped it at that time, I don't think that invitation comes. So first of all, Jamie, thank you for that. And secondly, I share that with you so that when you feel like you can't go any further, and maybe the validity of like who you are and what you do, you feel like, well, maybe I need to step away. And I'm not saying you shouldn't. Sometimes you should. Sometimes it's important to like drop it and go, okay, I'm done. And I don't know where I'm going or what I'm going to do, but I'm okay. I'm at peace. And I've reconciled part of it, or at least most of it. We'll go with most of it. I've reconciled with it for as most as I can, to the best of my ability. And if you make it through those oppositions and deal with the external pressure, interesting things can happen. So that brings us back to Pluto and Jupiter. So we're dealing with an opposition here. What is the external? What is the pressure of this? And we're just talking like socially, big picture. I've already gotten into like Leo, Jupiter Leo being the second sun, the Lamine and messy symbolism, whatever. But Pluto has to do with economics. It has to do with money, credit, other people's money, right? And you could make a case, and I've seen people make the case, that everything that's going on in the Middle East is about a hard reset, where we're not dealing with any more petroleum-based products, ammonium nitrate, all these things that go into creating a civilized world. In essence, right, setting the stage for something like a global famine. That's Pluto. That's the pressure. That's what people theoretically would feel under something like this. And what do you do with that? How do you deal with that? The social pressure is not just about what's going on in Iran and how it will affect global markets and also things like the food supply. We're in uncharted territory. Meanwhile, keep in mind that they've been perfecting making food from bugs. You think they've dropped that football somewhere along the way? No. And they're working on, lab grown meat, which is cloned basically. Very strange process. There's that sort of in the background. And I'm not trying to bring some doom and gloom in here, but I think at a certain level, people feel that pressure. If you're awake and aware, you know what's going on, you feel the social pressure. That is Pluto in Aquarius. And when enough people feel it, what happens? It has a very interesting effect. One of the things that I am paying attention to is the war on flock cameras. Hello, Pluto, Aquarius, right? And we talked about this last night with the flock and the eagle also being a symbol of Aquarius. What are people doing? I want to take them down. Like people are not, they're not down with the flock. And again, that's part of the social, I wouldn't call it a social movement. I don't think it's organized. Fairly organic in a lot of ways. People are just, they've had enough. And I guess what I'm seeing here too, I could be completely wrong, but it feels to me like the flock merchants I'm seeing, like the guys who are tearing the shit down, they strike me as being millennials. Like I'm getting like millennial vibe from taking down flock, which is interesting because the millennials have Pluto and Scorpio. And hello, Pluto is squaring, like if we go back to the first millennials, we're talking what, 1985, right? 1986. Translating Pluto is squaring their natal Pluto. They're waking the fuck up, right? This is the eagle and the serpent, right? Then they become one. They become the plumed serpent. So this is interesting. Now we're getting into some astrological mixology, right? And it's like, oh yeah, the millennials want to burn it all down. Go get those fucking cameras. That is a really good exercise, right? I'm not advocating it. I'm not advocating it. This is kind of rhetorical, and I'm throwing it out there as a sort of dark creative fantasy that maybe perhaps some millennials are actually having. But if in that context, like, am I wrong? That's the perfect scenario, perfect situation. Like, who really wants that shit? Hello, it's Pluto and Aquarius. Retrograde, they take them up, we take them down. They take them up, we take them down. And Jupiter Leo has the courage, right? It has the courage, the heart to do something like that. So, are we moving into an age of heroism? Is that where we're moving? I would say that, yeah, we could have that discussion. And that everybody is their version of a hero. And we, in many regards, are on the hero's journey. This is what I think this part of the basket is about. Right? We're finding the heart over here. Why? Because we have the social pressure that is giving us immediate feedback and feelings that we don't like where things are going. In general, we just don't. Some people, maybe a small portion, maybe they do. The other part of this too is that for a very long time, people thought that they could vote their way out of a social dilemma. And I think we're all realizing that that is not the case. Like, that's not going to happen. It's not going to work. So people have lost faith in the systems that govern them. And it's only a matter of time when that happens, then the social order begins to erupt. Now we get into the kind of the hijacking of 1, 2, 3, right? Barbault 1, 2, 3. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But let's play with this a little bit more, right? How about down here? The Uranus-Jupiter sextile. For me, this is the gold of the of what we're talking about here. This is the gold. And the reason why it's the gold, this is hitting the mother lode, is because Jupiter, like Saturn, is the bridge between the transpersonal planets and the inner planets. And some people will say that Jupiter shares that with Saturn. I don't agree with that. I think Jupiter is the apex of the personal planets, right? So if you do the math on that, you have the sun on one side and you have Jupiter, the second sun, on the other. So if we go this way through the evolutionary sort of chute, right? Jupiter is the maximalist outcome, starting from Sun, Mercury, Venus. We'll throw Earth in there, even though it's not on the wheel. Moon, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, maximalization. Right? It is Jupiter is the crowning achievement of the inner planets. Saturn plays the role of the gatekeeper between the inner planets, which I would include Jupiter as being, and then the outer planets and the exoplanets, because Saturn rules over time. Saturn looks to the future with Uranus, which is the future, and then it, in some ways, looks to the past also with Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and all the inner planets. So when I think of Jupiter, that's where I see it in sort of this planetary hierarchy, right? It is the end point of this kind of binary relationship with the sun. And what's really interesting is that I don't know if you guys, many of you probably have seen the movie 2010, which is the sequel to 2001. 2010 is a really good movie, and it stars Roy Scheider, who's one of my favorite actors. So, spoiler alert: if you haven't seen the movie, Jupiter becomes the second sun of our solar system. And yes, there are a lot of occultists who say, "Oh, that'll be the rising of Lucifer when Jupiter becomes the second sun." No, whatever. You could have that as part of your user's manual, but I just think it's really interesting in that it plays this role, right, with the sun and being the bookend, and then we get to Saturn, because Jupiter is our hopes and dreams and aspirations in a lot of ways. Even Pisces, which used to hang out with Jupiter, would reflect that, right? Jupiter's like, I'm going to dream big. I'm going to be big. I'm going to be the best. I'm going to be the greatest. That's Jupiter. And then you run into Saturn. And it's like, well, hold on a second. If you really want to be that, you really want to do that, we're going to have to test that. We're going to have to see how dedicated you are. Yeah, you may have a little bit of talent, certainly have a lot of enthusiasm. And there are a lot of people who have a little bit of talent, sometimes a lot of talent, but they may not always have a lot of enthusiasm. Or they may not always have the ability to be Saturnian and basically dare people to tell them no. Right? That's Jupiter. And you run into the test with Saturn. Okay. Let's see what you got. Let's see how dedicated you are. What's really interesting is I was watching a clip from the World Cup, and I don't know who the guy was, but he was in the stands and he was barking at Tom Brady, and Tom Brady was with his son, and the guy was yelling at Tom Brady. Tom Brady's a Leo, by the way. He's a Leo sun with Saturn conjunct his sun, and Tom is a Libra rising. Of course, he's a Libra rising. So what does Tom Brady do? He flips the guy off. Now, the guy was I don't know what his beef was with Tom Brady, but I don't think that did a lot for Tom Brady's image. And you would even go through the comments. It was like, yeah, kind of a bad move. You should have just, not paid attention to the guy, right? And Brady comes off like stone cold and hard. And I mean, for me, he's like a guy kind of without a soul right now. And again, why am I talking about this? Because number one, he's a Leo, number one. Number two, he's considered royalty. He's considered athletic royalty. And in that moment, he did not act like a king. He didn't. He acted like a middle of the rung fan, middle of the road, lower rung fan, right? And again, I'm just sort of contextualizing this, the Jupiter and Leo stuff, like it's kind of happening, right? So we can separate out, and differentiate. We are not that. And why would we even aspire to that? And we may not know the totality of who we are, but we're not that. And the quicker we understand that, now we're into the Uranus sextile to Jupiter. Boom, instant, boom, right? So let's play with this. This aspect lasts what? 5 days, roughly. That's the time frame, 5-6 days. So see this in your own life. Try this out as an experiment in your own life. Because again, the Uranus Jupiter sextile is the one that's the most personal. Can you make changes and adjustments to your life and do it in a way where you're not looking back? You're like, okay, this is it. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm doing. This is the direction I'm headed in. And then do you have the trust? You have the trust in your heart, which isn't just an organ, right? It is bigger than that, to see you through those choices, those decisions. So that when you run into Saturn, you're like, aha, I've made this choice. Yes, I'm ready for the test. I'm ready to be tested with my commitment and my enthusiasm and my passion and the love for the thing that I do. Boom. Neptune also playing a role here. Right now we're into the trine. Hello, trine city. We got another trine over here too. Now we're into the trine with Neptune and Jupiter. And that is profound. It's deep. Like Neptune is the dream. It dissolves barriers, and we have to pay attention. What sign is it in? It's in Aries, which is the individual. It is the self. Now we're not here to really worship self. That's not the overall plan here. At least I'm not, right? Every now and then we'll have to talk ourselves off the ledge a little bit, right? But if you understand, and I think this is, for me, you can land anywhere here. If you understand that your trajectory in this life has always been divinely guided, always, right? Like the creative spark that was placed inside each and every one of us, except for those NPCs, that it's there for us to embrace and accept and trust and have faith in. It's kind of like one of the what is it, the person has this conversation with I don't know if it's Jesus or God. I think we'll say God. Insert Jesus or God, whichever you want. And it's like they've lived their life, right? They're in the past life review, and they're the person is looking at something. It's like, I see my footprints in the sand, and I see two sets of footprints, and then all of a sudden, I thought I was walking with you. I thought I was walking with you, and now I only see one set of footprints. Like, what happened to you? What happened to you? And, God says, well, that's where I put you on my back. And those footprints you're seeing are mine, right? Like that's kind of a modern parable. And I feel like that's Neptune, Jupiter trine. And that there are times like we walk around, myself included, and when I hit the wall last year and had that health crisis, I was like, holy fucking shit. That was big time, really big time. And I realized that we take our autonomic responses to life for granted. That you can think whatever you want about your body and this realm. You can't wait to fucking get out, which I understand. Trust me, I get it. I get it. That these are really just, receptacles for archons, and we're tied to this dark matrix, a la, Neo, and it's all just, shite until we shut it, and then we can move on to some higher realm. Well, that may be true, but I'd also like to think that these bodies of ours, which for the most part operate without us even fucking thinking about them. They operate without us, like, you're just doing your thing, you're running errands, whatever. Like it is operating. You're breathing, you're pumping blood. Maybe it's not optimal. Maybe you're not feeling like 100%. Maybe your BP is too high. But at the end of the day, like this thing is running. It's kind of an amazing thing when you think about it. And when you really, really think about it, you're like, holy shit. Maybe I need to spend a little more time thinking about it. Maybe I need to pay a little more attention to it. Maybe I can even give thanks for it because it seems to be, maybe it's not perfect, but it's holding up. And you don't have to do, I mean, you can make it better. You can lose weight, change your diet, change your attitude. Like those things help. But at the end of the day, you don't have to do a goddamn thing. You could just exist. It's going to work. It is going to work. It's like, isn't that amazing? Right? We're unconscious of this amazing thing that's happening, underneath our flesh. But it's also happening out here, like in the realm of the spirit, right? This is all part of it. So this Neptune trine Jupiter is critical because the more that you give thanks, right? However you do it, the more that you give thanks and the more that you can share your love, because Jupiter and Leo's love, guess what? The more you get back, the more recognition, even if your life is not perfect, right? It's not perfect. You say, you know what? I am grateful for the life I have. I am grateful for the health I have. It could be a lot worse. There's always the glass half full. And again, however you want to word it, like God, thank you. Jesus, thank you. Buddha, whatever. It's like whatever's out there. Say, the Buddha thing is cool. One of my peeps. I'll take that for now. I think that the recognition is important, and that's what we have here with Jupiter, Neptune, and it's all about faith, right? It's all about faith and having the faith to, guess what, creatively make change, because that's what Uranus brings to the table. Creative change, improvise, do something different. Again, it's not all about me, but I have a Jupiter Uranus trine in my chart. And, when I started to study astrology, that was the first thing I locked in on. When I began to like read the description of that, I'm like, man, that is me. I'm good at improvising. I'm good at thinking and talking and kind of writing on my feet. So I understand this aspect from a trine perspective. From a sextile perspective, it's like sextiles are different than trines. Right? So I want to give you an example here. So with Neptune, Jupiter, that's a trine. Trines are what you're born with. They're like naturally occurring gifts. You tap into them. For me, sextiles are activated when you explore them. Are they kind of there some of the time? They're there all the time, but they can be slightly inert. But when you act on them, all of a sudden, boom, they light up. Like, well, what happens if I improvise? What happens if I, try to drive somewhere without my, Google Maps and, shit like that, right? What happens if I kind of, wing it? If it's something that I am really familiar with? What happens if I don't use a recipe book and I go to create something that's what I'm talking about with Uranus Jupiter sextile. You you hit it, you kind of dive into it. The Jupiter Neptune trine, this is what theoretically we're born with. Right? We are born with the ability to give thanks for the spirit. And when you do, it when you recognize it, it recognizes you back. That's what we're talking about here. And again, we're born with it. And for us to think that we don't have something like that in our lives is pure hubris. Pure hubris. I know that some of you, a lot of you, have experienced the miraculous, either in your life directly or with one of your loved ones. And when you go back and you look at some of those things that happened to you in that realm, there's no way you can explain those things. Can tragedy also be a part of that story? Sure. Sometimes when it's time to go, it's time to go. And it can be equally as harsh as it can be equally as redemptive. It's the nature of the universe. Now, what sets this apart from all these other potential aspects is the number 4, right? We have 4 degrees here, 4 degrees here, 4 degrees here, 4 degrees here. So we got 4, we got 8, we got 12, we got 16, and we got the opposition, which would be, I don't know, I guess we can throw that in there, even though it's not for 16. We'll throw 2 4s in there, 24. 24. 24. Interesting number, right? 24. It is the 12-hour cycle times 2. Yep. But 4 as a number is also what? It's about structure and order and form. That's what it is. Structure, order, and form. Creating a foundation and putting all these in place by making it manifest somehow in the material world. Different for everybody. So I think this is an interesting moment in time. But what about the downstream effect? I mean, clearly there's a lot more going on here. We also have this really cool grand trine with the moon. And it's trining Mars, and it's trining Uranus, and trining Pluto. And I'm digging it. Right? I'm digging it. It's a nice trine kite pattern. It's a great, great atmosphere to talk astrology about tonight. All right. So I've gone through, let's call it the light side of this. Now we're going to get into the dark side of this and the hijacking of the Barbault basket. All right. Now, if you've been on Twitter, one of the things that you might have noticed, there are 2 things that caught my attention. Number 1, Donald Trump is ordering all Americans to come home abroad. I don't know if you saw that or not, but let's just validate this to make sure that I'm not giving you bad info. So let me do a little query here. So if you're traveling, okay. So he didn't really say this, right? I read this. He said this is about illegal immigrants. See the news here. Hold on. I had read that he was saying this. Um, mm, okay. All right. It's a good thing I checked. We always have to check. Let's see. I just want to make sure. Okay, good. All right. But there's another part of this as well. And this is real. There was a guy who was a retired Marine, pretty young. He just got he got a message that they're recalling him for active service duty. Now, we just lost some soldiers with the latest round of missiles. And apparently, Trump is now furious. U.S. soldiers killed. So let's bring this up. Supposedly, the death count is much higher, right? It's much higher. Iran war rages after U.S. soldiers killed in Jordan. Why are they in Jordan? Trump attends World Cup final. Okay, I think that this is playing right into the hands of the U.S., which wants to escalate this war. I don't think they have any intention of ending it. And this gets into the hijacking of the Barbault Basket 123. So let me give you just a quick little history lesson here and some other times where this has occurred, and specifically as it relates to the planet Saturn. All right. And I've talked about this before, but I'm going to bring it home so that you guys understand this. Okay. Well, what do we have here? This is Kennedy's limo. And again, you're welcome to think about whatever you want to think about with this, that he didn't die, it was all fake, whatever, right? But he was never president after that. Whatever happened to these people? I mean, they had a bird's fucking eye view here, right? So Saturn in Aquarius, it's at 17 degrees, 11/22/63. So I've talked about this before. It seems like when we, as a people, not just in the US, but globally, it seems like when there is a potential for coming together and rallying in a unified way, Saturn in Aquarius kicks in and grabs hold of the collective moment and inserts its will. Like we will have an experience that, again, is collective, but it's going to be not on our terms, but it's going to be on the terms and conditions of the people who are the custodial wards of so-called consensus reality, right? So we could call them the lords of Sauron or Saturn. So if you think about Kennedy, Kennedy is becoming a global force. Now, I'm not somebody who thinks John F. Kennedy walked on water. Very flawed human. But nonetheless, he was interesting, right? He's the first television president. He goes to Germany and makes that incredible speech in Germany. Is that the Ich 9 speech or whatever it's called? John F. Kennedy is creating a global profile. And it is a time where we're becoming more and more enmeshed in the so-called global village. Like I even remember going to the World's Fair, which was right around this time in Flushing Meadows in New York, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? I believe that's where it was. No, it's New Jersey. It's where they have Shea Stadium, or where Shea Stadium was. And I remember seeing the "It's a Small World After All" exhibit at the World's Fair, which they then would ship off to Disney. They had the Tiki Room with all the birds, and "It's a Small World After All" with and that got shipped to Disney. And in a lot of ways, that's like the spirit, right? That is like the spirit of the time. And then this happens, and yeah, we're all unified. We're all unified in a moment of fucking horror. And then you could clearly make a case, which I have, that the timeline with Saturn being time, is hijacked. It's totally hijacked. And we're going this way, right? The limo's going this way, and then it winds up going this way. And I've gotten into this in much greater detail with what happens with the 60s and MK Ultra and the hippie movement, which is neither good nor bad, but was managed. And ultimately the darkness that comes out of this with Altamont and the end of the 60s. So the flip side of this would be 14 years later, Saturn in Leo, right? And that is roughly 1976, 77, when Jimmy Carter is elected president of the United States. Bad, really bad. So this is, for me, right? Like the quote unquote lords of time in this world saw this moment coming. And what did they do? They hijacked it. Keep that in mind, right? Let's do another one. So let's see, where do I want to go next? Oh, right here. (2/28, 1991), George Bush. If I'm not mistaken, let me just Desert Storm. There we go. Which is the first Gulf War. And so it starts it's a January 17th, 1991, Operation Desert Shield. And then it goes to Operation Desert Storm. Right. So what do we have here? Well, first of all, we have Saturn in Aquarius. And this is where they really sort of jump on it, right? 2 degrees, Saturn in Aquarius, and this is a global event. This is a global event. This is when we had theoretically the coalition of the willing. And George Bush had managed to rope in all these countries to go get Saddam Hussein. So guess what? We're all again experiencing something together, Aquarius, real time, but the motherfucker hijacks it. They hijack this. And every nodal point with Saturn and Aquarius, for me, is the point where we can flip back into that pre-Kennedy timeline, which we're going to see again at a certain point. And so this is where George Bush makes his first speech about the New World Order, right? Which again is this, this global consortium that is going to rule by the rule of law, not the rule of the jungle. Those were his words. And it's not the same degree. Still Saturn in Aquarius. Okay, so I got one more for you here. And you guys will clearly recognize this one. And it is here. So 323:20. Saturn Nakra, 0 degrees. It goes, this thing starts on, it's either 311 or 313, and then the following Friday, which was 320. So this is just, so there are two emergency orders that Trump delivers. One is on 313. 311 is when the NBA cancels its season. Canceled, done, 311. Same date as Fukushima, 311, right? Important day. But then we go to 320. It's the second executive order, and that, boom, that's it. All right, 3 days later, I believe that's a Monday, and we have, again, something we all experience globally. All three of those events, the killing of Kennedy, it's global. Even though it's U.S., it's global. Gulf War I is global. Coalition of the willing. All these countries, yeah, we'll go, we'll help you, we'll route them out. And then, COVID is clearly very close in the rearview mirror. Does this image just bring up contempt and disgust? Do you remember? Sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody who might have been there and doing your Bollywood dances, but how fucking annoying was that? It's like, why were they doing that? Were they doing it because they were bored and they needed to have a good time? Or was it the big fuck you to the rest of the people? Like, we're going to do our little dance routines and we're going to smile and be happy. And then you're going to come in here and we're going to make your lives miserable. Is that what that was about? But again, it's hijacking the moment. What happens if none of these events take place? How do we evolve? Do we become more structured and ordered around how we as a group, as a collective, and, by the time we get here versus with Kennedy was a lot easier. We hadn't had mass migration under Kennedy, right? But we were still, I think, very much hooked into this idea of the government, much more so than now. By the time we get here and like on the other side, man, we don't really trust that shit, right? So we got a ways to go with Saturn and Aquarius to come around again. Like, it's going to be a while, but right, we know that there are times when, and again, this goes back to the beginning of what I was sharing with you guys, that if it's true that politicians, kings, queens, the people behind the scene use astrology and use astrological timing to put things together to accelerate or amplify. I mean, even 9/11. I've talked about this before. When you look at the chart of 9/11, right, it happens on 9/11, and it's the Twin Towers, and the moon is in what? It is in Gemini, right? Where Saturn, it's in Gemini. And then even the sun, which is in Virgo, shares Mercury with another sign, Gemini. So it is the Mercury, right? Is Mercury and Venus? They've got bed buddies, right? So Mercury shared by Virgo and Gemini. So again, I don't want to. You guys have heard this before. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. So I guess what I'm saying here, right, is can this moment here can this moment here, right? Can it be susceptible to being hijacked, for lack of a better term, like you're taking a Barbault 123? Could we be swept up into a global situation where all of a sudden now it's not just the United States and Israel and those partners of ours who seem to be getting their asses kicked uh, in the Arabian Gulf, right? Maybe it moves beyond that. Maybe we're looking at something here again over the next week. We'll go with a week that takes this energy, which again, theoretically should be about us again, but it is not about us. However, it mirrors, right? It mirrors, it's like a simulacra of the Barbault effect, but it's negative, right? It's flipped on its side. And again, and it's again using something like this to push an agenda, and I would say a nefarious agenda. Now, before you say, "Oh, Robert, why did you shit on this parade?" Let me just go back to that time when the Berlin Wall fell. So when the Berlin Wall fell, everybody was having a party. It was great. Communism's over. My God, we're going to have a grand old time. We don't have to worry about the red threat. We don't have to spend all this money on war. Boy, we built all those weapons so that, we could blow the world up 10 times over along with Russia. Oh my God. Thank God that's over. Well, how did that go? Well, it didn't really go very well. The defense contractors needed to spend more money on more shit that blows up. So we had the Balkan shit, and then that was, now we're in the war on terror. Oh, crank up the war machine again. Yeah, we need a bunch of new stuff. Oh, and by the way, this isn't a conventional war. This is an unconventional war. Computers, drones, all the things that are needed for that. So it started off as something that looked like oneness, and that Barbault would say, "Oh yeah, well this represents it." Doesn't end that way. Conversely, if we're looking at something like this, and let's say, for instance, shit goes haywire in Iraq and in the Gulf of Arabia, and everything accelerates, right? Something big happens and accelerates. That it's the hijacking of the Barbault. Well, this is what I think. I think that has an extremely net negative response. And that ultimately what will happen, let's bring in a little Uranus here in Gemini, a little Pluto in Aquarius, that things don't go in the direction that they ultimately would want them to. We're going to steer this energy, we're going to steer this event, and we're going to create kind of a global conflagration, or we'll make sure that a lot more people are involved than they are now. I don't think it works out well. I don't. I don't think, if anything, right, it would be. So I guess what I'm saying here is that whatever happens with this, like I gave you my prescription for it. Like you can put it in your own chart. Like this is where knowing your chart is important. You know, where is Jupiter in your chart? That's the first place I'd look at. Where is Jupiter in your chart, and what's it doing? And where can you expand in that area? So I've given you like my prescription of what I think this is and how you can work with it. What they do with it and how they use it, completely different application. But I think ultimately, even if it goes down like that, and we're in it now, we're going to see what happens. Even if it goes down like that, it's going to work out for us, right? It's going to work out for us because it's the nature of Uranus and Pluto Pluto and Aquarius to flip this thing on its head. So just to reiterate one more time, if we look at the example of the fall of the wall, which was great, but did it turn out great? At the end of the day, no. I mean, even further downstream, we're back in a fucking war with Russia again. Oh, we need that. But this would be different. This is like, go ahead. Go ahead. Try to hijack this. Try to ride the rails of this confluence. Use it. Go try to use it to your advantage. Not going to work. Not going to work. We are different. We're different people. We have different software, different antennae, right? We've been hardened. We went through fucking COVID. We went through that shit. That was a war. Believe it or not, that was a war. And you people are you should all get medals. Should all get medals for getting through that shit. Right. And you know, we're still a little battle hardened. We're like the Houthis. We're like the post-COVID Houthis. It's like, okay, roll up our sleeves. What do you got next? What do you got next? That's part of it. The other part is I don't think they can get away with whatever they have planned. Whatever it is. I don't think they're going to get away with it. That's just my feeling. So in the end, does the Barbault effect win? If it is a thing, and we've seen it historically, at least, you know, with the fall of the wall, the answer would be yes. But I don't think you can use this. I don't think they can use this to hijack. Even if they do, it'll have a detrimental effect. All right. One of the things that I wanted to talk about before we get out of here. Why don't we get out of here? I want to leave. I want to end on that. I wanted to talk about Trump's chart because I've kind of found something interesting about Trump's chart that I'd never really thought of before. And I don't want to get into it because I think we reached a place here of conclusion with this chart. So I don't want to like muddy the water or water down the broth. By the way, I'm not really floating. I might have to take another one of these to see if I get the float. But I hope you found this to be of interest and interesting because I think there's a there, and I tried to make a case where these astrological moments in time that have some degree of meaning can be hijacked and steered. And this theoretically could be one of them, but ultimately it won't be. All right. That's all I have. Thank you for being here and showing up. Hit the like, hit subscribe, swap email addresses and phone numbers if that's what you want to do. Celestial Blueprint at Amazon. The hardcover is there. You can go for it, purchase it. I'm going to have a link where if you want a signed copy, I'll have a signed copy. Great intro by David Palmer. I need to give a shout out to David. If you haven't seen the book, let me just show you some really cool stuff. Like this is the typeface of the book. Can you see it? It's really laid out very nicely. Bruce did an excellent job. We've got some interesting illustrations in there as well, right? We have an appendix. Look at this table of contents, big table of contents. And what else? We have some useful charts as well. Thank Jamie for putting those useful charts in at the beginning. Where are they? Hold on. Where are they? They're in here. They're in here. Where are they? Building your first chart. They're in here somewhere. I'll find them. Hold on. Now I'm on a hunt. The hunt for chart October. Let's see. Hold on. Yeah, we get into dignity, there's all kinds of stuff, right? Getting your chart, a first timer's guide. Where is those sneaky charts? Are they in the front? All right, hold on. Well, the illustrations are in here. Well, there's a chart right there. Let's see. I don't know where they are. I don't know where they went. They should be in here. Anyway, I will endeavor to find them. I'll endeavor to find them. Anyway, there it is. Hardcover available, and that's it. Thank you for your patience and your presence, and I appreciate every single one of you. God bless you. Love you all. Bye for now.